Okay. Welcome everyone to this panel on Big Pharma. This panel is moderated by Chris Haskell, and I will let him take it away.
All right, thanks very much. And thanks everyone for tuning in to this RESI panel on Big Pharma. My name is Chris Haskell. I work for Bayer Pharmaceuticals in San Francisco. But first, I'd like to let my panelists introduce themselves. And actually, if you could, in the introduction, if you could give one hint or suggestion to people working in the new virtual digital space we're working in. So why don't we start with Tom?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks, Chris, and well, good evening, everybody. Good morning to some of you. My name is Tom Burkeen. I am a director in business development at Amgen in the transaction team. Basically, the guys and the girls who are moving the deal forward, lead the deal flow, and basically negotiating the deal with prospective partners to execute new business opportunities for Amgen. I will touch upon later on the therapeutic areas that we're focusing on. One tip to interact with us, well, in this COVID-19 situation, is still I think perseverance is very important, and I think there are obvious various ways to get in contact with us. That may not be necessarily somebody in the transactions team. That is normally people who are picking up the deal internally and move it further. But in our scouting team or prospectors team, we definitely have good capabilities in handling basically every question that people may have.
I've done it already. I've been the first to talk through the muted button. Mark, how about if you go next?
That's actually a very good reminder because I almost talked through the mute button myself. So hi, my name. That's fine. My name is Mark Ralph. I'm an executive director in the Boehringer Ingelheim Venture Fund. I've actually only recently started with the BI Venture Fund as of April 1st with a focus on digital health. But I've actually been with Boehringer Ingelheim, the parent company, for 18 years. During that time, I've been in various roles. My scientific background is as a chemist. I've taken roles in operations, finance, and most recently, I've been the global head of contract negotiations and alliance management group in business development and licensing organization. So I could speak to a few things. I could definitely speak on the strategic partnering aspects of Boehringer Ingelheim. I could speak very well on the transactions and alliance management part, and I'm starting to be able to speak a little more on the investor side of things as well. So looking forward to this talk today.
Thanks, Mark. Tim, please.
Okay, immediate. I forgot the mute advice. Hi, everyone. My name's Tim Luca from Eli Lilly. So I'm a VP in corporate business development. So I'm in the emerging technology innovation group, which is basically mostly early stage platforms, new modalities, new biology partnering. And then our team's also responsible for all of Lilly's external venture fund investing. So I can cover both aspects, both direct partnering with Lilly and also a lot more around investing and setting up biotech companies. I've got a 25-year history in pharma, both large pharma, medium pharma, my own biotech. I've worked in internal research and I've worked on external deals. And yeah, in terms of advice, I guess I would say Lilly is definitely open for business. We've closed a number of very large deals recently. My book of work is full as usual, but please get in touch with us. We're definitely looking forward to hearing from you. Some of the methods may be a little bit different at the moment, but that doesn't mean we're not interested. We may not be able to do face-to-faces for a while, but we definitely want relations with the best innovators, and the world needs medicine. So please continue with us, maybe under slightly different circumstances, that's all.
Thanks, Tim. So as I mentioned, I work for Bayer in San Francisco. I'm the head of our Open Innovation Center for the West Coast. And my team is looking at emerging innovation, both in academics and biotech, across Bayer's therapeutic areas. Our focus is Western US, so it's a pretty broad region. And I guess now that we're digital, we can sort of just be anywhere. And maybe we'll come to that topic in a little bit about regions and how that may be breaking down. we partner with the BD&L team and the Bayer Venture team, Leaps, to do all sorts of different types of deals. And again, we may get, as Mark mentioned, get into that a little bit today. I guess I've got one very tangible piece of advice as we move towards more digital presentations or virtual presentations. If you're working off a slide deck, remove the animations, please. And be prepared to pre-send the slide deck or send it in an emergency, because there's nothing worse than spending half your allotted time telling people to click through. So anyway, don't do that. Yeah. So that's my very tangible piece of advice. Keeping on sort of a practical theme here, I thought what we spend our hour here today talking about is very practically the process of how you work with larger pharma. You know, recognizing that RESI is a conference where often we have some first-time CEOs, some emerging companies. Often it is sort of difficult to know what's happening behind the curtain on the pharma company. So we'll talk a little bit about how first to get the attention of the right people at the company, a little bit about how to stay in contact and eventually drive it to a deal. And of course, all best laid plans tend to go awry when we get a group of people talking, so I fully expect us to move off script to a certain extent. But also, I think, given the times, it'll be really important to reflect on not just business as normal, but business as normal as it is right now in the current state of the pandemic. So I guess with that, let's start off a little bit just going a virtual room here about what's the best way to get the attention of someone that would be the gatekeeper on the pharma side for a deal. Now, are these types of speed dating meetings historically productive, and now has that changed? And then what's the best way to rise above sort of the many invites that are coming in? So anyone who wants to take that, please feel free to jump in.
So maybe I could go first. So in general, I think the partnering meetings traditionally in the normal environment have always been a good mechanism for getting hold of our various TA business development leadership teams. Right now, it's kind of interesting. Everything's kind of moved to a digital form. And my personal experience is that we're actually probably seeing more companies now than what we did when we were in real-time participation, because I think the ability to switch from call to call to call to call to call is just much more realistic today than what it was before. The other thing is that I think we're all becoming a little more flexible on boundaries, between time zone boundaries. I think that we're probably taking a lot more early morning teleconferences and late evening teleconferences. So I would say that the partnering perspective and engaging with others is not really being that hampered. For BI as well, if you're doing a cold call and trying to find who you should actually contact, we are pretty strongly referring people to the website, because we are putting in a lot of effort on the websites to make sure that for the particular therapeutic areas, the appropriate people who you should be talking to are listed. It includes their email addresses, I think even the phone numbers of the individuals as well. So that's definitely a good way to make sure that if you're in oncology, that you're getting routed to the right oncology person. If you're in immunology, then you should be routed to the immunology person, etc. We also have the venture fund team up there as well that you could engage with. So anybody that you want to speak with from either a raising money perspective or doing some kind of partnership is appropriately listed with all of the contact information on our website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if I may be the second, I think that is for Amgen somewhat similar. Of course, the partnering conferences, the speed dating during those conferences is definitely attractive, useful, efficient. I think today, of course, with all the technology that we have, we can easily connect to each other. Obviously, it is the case that, as I mentioned earlier, the prospector team, the early R&D teams are most equipped to take the opportunities and look upon them. They are also much closely connected to the R&D organization. Obviously, Amgen wants to do deals in primarily, and then looking at early and late stage deals in the area of oncology, inflammation, and cardiovascular. We have additional areas like bone health and nephrology. The two latter ones are more towards tilting to more late stage opportunities, whereas the other three areas basically all over. We have a strong interest in technology platform. Not surprisingly, Amgen acquired New Evolution in 2009 to basically optimize and make the small molecule research more efficient. That is something we also did with Micromat in 2013, which then at that time was monoclonal antibodies and the BITE technology that we acquired in-house. Also, our online portal, which can be found on amgenbd.com, is a way of getting connected to us. You can indeed put your opportunity in there. And since we have a relatively small team of people dedicated to the therapeutic areas, the follow-up is normally pretty swift, I would say, within a week and a half, something like that. So that is in addition to the virtual connect that we today make is another way of getting to us. Again, also, as I said, we have a small team, but the people that normally support and represent a therapeutic area, they are all scientifically experienced within the TA, and they have a strong R&D connect to the organization. That said, it is also good that BD reports to the CEO, which of course makes the flow of deal and the triaging of deals quite efficient with respect to governance. So I think plenty of opportunities. As Tim also said, we are very interested in doing deals. It's fair to say that we want to stay within the therapeutic areas. Technology, as I mentioned, is important. What we also think is very important is, well, that there's genetic presence, genetic proof of that things are working. And we're looking at different and difficult to target approaches like PROTACs, transcription factors, and RNA. So I think that in a nutshell is the way to go for Amgen.
Yeah, I have similar comments from Eli Lilly's behalf. I think shouldn't be too difficult to get hold of us. We also have a very swift online portal. We've historically been at all of the partnering events, and now we're at most of the digital ones. At least some of our team is. Probably folks may not realize that internally we're all connected up. So those of us in early stage know all the late stage partnering folks, the experts in the different capabilities regions. So I would say probably there's no need to sort of carpet bomb everyone, inside, because we all get the same information. So, but yeah, in general, we want to hear from you. It'll be great if you could, make it easy for us just because of the volume. But we appreciate, it's hard for smaller companies to make noise and get to the top of the pile. But some simple facts and explaining why you're differentiated, perhaps what you know about, our strategy and how it could fit. Few comments on what you're trying to achieve by when. And some version of a one-pager or a few non-confidential comments is usually enough for us to make a swift decision. And obviously that our process goes from light touch, trying to get decisions pretty quickly so no one wastes their time, through to much more involved confidential discussions, through to large diligence teams with every function in the company represented sometimes, and even those we can turn around in a week if it's a sizable deal that needs to transact. I guess other advice, I guess there's probably a slight difference between having a nice scientific chat with someone who's just interested in what you're doing versus getting through to the proper BD team who are charged with actually finding the money and doing deals and have legal support, corporate finance support, IP support. So try and maybe find someone who has a track record or has a job title that sounds like they're going to help you do a deal with the company. We obviously need the great scientific interactions, and we do consult with experts. Of course, it's both sides that are important, but often, with a company of our size, it's 40,000 people, and as Ton said, we have quite a small team that are actually charged with getting these things done, and our team handles deals anything from a few $100,000 on a MTA study all the way to multi-billion-dollar M&As. So we can handle anything, and we'll find the right structure to work with you. But must be quite frustrating if you're not sure who everybody is and you've had through a lot of sort of scientists and general, people in companies with very different jobs. So try and get through to people who are in either search and evaluate or BD or similar job titles, because they will actually be able to sort out what we need to do.
Yeah, thanks all of you. Yeah, I'm noticing that people are tending to use LinkedIn a lot more as a way to try to navigate org structures a bit and get in touch with people. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst case, as you mentioned, carpet bombing. We'll see, people that somehow decipher our email address code, and first name dot last name at bayer.com, and you hit everyone from the CEO down, and usually what you get is a really irritated email to the BD person saying, "Please fix this, make it go away." This is the wrong way to make a first impression, shall we say? I think Tim, you mentioned, I think, make it easy for the person on the pharma side in terms of what you're preparing for them. I think you mentioned making sure doing your homework, which is important. And in Bayer, we're really in oncology, cardiology, women's health, and ophthalmology. And we have someone approaching us on a neurology asset. It's clearly not something that's very much in focus. And so you want people to do their homework and try to find, at least understand the problems you're trying to solve, so that they're helping you solve those problems. And then I think you also mentioned, Tim, the one pager, the concise deck, making sure that they're presenting the right information. Any additional advice on that? I mean, I think it was a great summary, Tim, but I think how you present yourself right off the bat is important for getting people's attention.
Yeah, I mean, I guess many of us will have a similar list, but we lead with the science. We want kind of breakthrough science with the potential for large effect sizes in patients. We obviously want our company to be able to accelerate and make a difference in a partnership. We obviously want the semblance of a sensible medical hypothesis, strong IP. Ideally a strong team who know what they're doing. But I guess also don't feel the need to pretend you can do everything. We see a lot of very small biotechs that are, asking for 50-50 co-commercialization rights, and they have like no one in their company who's ever developed a drug. So, we're very open to working with you to try and make the best of it. But if you have a real secret sauce or a, really differentiated offering in one or two areas, that's fine. We'll find all the other bits we need, but don't try and pretend that you can do everything, because that's why we do deals, because actually we can't do everything, and we need that innovation and those partnerships. So I think some honesty, obviously we want an optimistic view of helping patients, and then obviously we need all the underlying parts of the science and the strategy to be pretty solid. And then obviously we'll dig into more and more information and more questioning and more collaboration as we go on if we're interested. But I think it's much like selling anything to start with. I mean, you don't want to be selling tractors to someone who wants to buy a Ferrari or vice versa. So, just try and keep it on message and sensible. And we're used to trying to work through areas we don't understand or things that are a little bit less clear. But get the basics right. It's not, most people have had some training on innovation, or I've got friends who work in biotechs these days. So I'd like to think there aren't too many surprises, at least at Lilly. We're just passionate about the science and trying to find a good deal for everyone.
Thanks. Tom or Mark, anything you want to add to that, or any horror stories that will serve as cautionary tales for things not to do?
Well, I mean, not really horror stories. I mean, I'm at least not aware of them. As Tim said, it needs to make sense, and it's not very complicated to find out what Amgen wants from a therapeutic point of view. The only thing which has changed since October last year is that we have left more or less the CNS space, with the exception of the migraine space. I think the BACE inhibitor that we had for Alzheimer's didn't work. I think it's of course great to see that Lilly is still pursuing this Alzheimer's research. So that is an area which has left some attention to us, and I'm pretty sure everybody has noted that. Otherwise, it's in the same ballpark as Tim is saying. TA focus, genetic validation is very important for us, because we have this unit on Iceland to decode where we have invested significantly in, and we're doing that in other areas, also in Europe, to get genetic validation very strongly embedded in our actually R&D decision making. Comparing patient benefit, large population, we're focusing on, not surprisingly, best or first-in-class medication. And of course, we need to see a feasible development and commercialization regulatory path to the market. So it's in that respect, not significantly different, I would say. But genetic validation is an important item for us.
There's not a lot that I could add to this because I think BI is very similar science first, especially for early stage indications. I would echo though and reiterate that even if you are early stage, it's a novel target, novel platform that you're looking to partner. Some level of focus is needed. I think where it creates a certain level of frustration in big pharma is when you have a list of indications that it could be in. So it might be one slide of just, it's the miracle cure for everything on the face of the earth. And from one aspect, you might think that it's great, it's all encompassing, that a pharmaceutical company would want to do that. But you can't be perfect at everything. So it's good to say, okay, we're focused. This is where our expertise is going to be built up. This is where we're going to do our in vivo studies. This is where we're going to, to really know the science. We will have confidence in that. That's 10 times better than seeing 50 different indications that a particular target is implicated in. One other point, Chris, just on the other side of it, as a little advice. So for as much as there's contact to us, I think that there's a fair exchange between the biotech community and the pharma community, in that you guys send us stuff to get replies on, and we should be giving you some form of response back to you, some kind of either moving to a next step, moving to a call, or else sometimes it's a decline because it's out of focus. And one thing that we've started doing with MBI over the last few years is really getting our folks to practice on sending a decline with information. So it's not just a flat, hey, this is, sorry, we're not interested, or else a no response to your email. But the thing is, and this is one thing that's always gotten me, is, I've spent a lot of time drafting emails giving reasons as to why we're not investing, normally 2 or 3 points. But then you get the follow-on emails as to, well, we can address this because of this, or and the decline at that point is meant to be a decline. And I think that no is not necessarily a bad answer. It's not necessarily a forever answer, but it is the answer you've got. And there are some reasons, and we don't necessarily need to have a justification to change our minds here.
And it's a really good point, Mark. And I know it's a challenge for all of us, is to gather thoughtful information, especially for things that just feel like they really have no potential for a lot of basic reasons, because it's hard to draft that email that starts to challenge our hypothesis, for example, at all. But do you feel like an email that's more thoughtful in some way should be encouraging for a company? I know that you don't want to hear the immediate response back, but if someone actually has given time to think about what would strengthen your program,
yeah,
how should they take that and maybe, one thing that I'll let you weigh in on this, but I know that if we see that they've addressed those comments the next time we meet them 6 to 8 months later, that's important.
No, you're absolutely right. The one thing that we say to potential partners is that it may be a no today, but it might not be a no in 12 months. And with the way that indication strategies change or new information comes to light, it's a realistic expectation that once every 18 to 24 months there could definitely be changes. So I think that the information that we feed back, if they've addressed it in the long term, if they've come up with new information, then feel free to reach back out. But this is where the difficulties and the thoughtfulness comes into the emails that we write in response.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. I mean, I agree. We want to have long-term good relations with great innovators, and exactly as the others have said, things that aren't right today can be right tomorrow. Companies change strategy a little bit. All sorts of things can happen in over a year. So we've had. Don't worry if you have multiple touch points with us. Actually, that's probably a good thing that we're interested in. Also, companies often start new programs, and it's just good. The number of meetings I've been to where we may not be quite interested in their lead program, but they say, oh, and we've started a program on X, and that's been a slam dunk for us, and we're super interested. So keep the dialogue going, but do be patient. It's not always a direct path to a win, but actually I've kept relations with companies for a couple of years and actually done deals with them at the end of that. And then the last thing, I agree with Ton about the genetic validation. The other thing is about homework is sort of differentiation and competition as well. I think it's good when companies understand the market around their project a little bit. That it's not good news when they say we could be first in class, and then we do a bit of a review and we find a competitor drug 3 years ahead with what seems to be a very similar profile. So I think it's okay to be honest again and say why you think you can be differentiated, and even if you haven't done the studies, to say we're planning to do a head-to-head in this model with what we think is the standard of care, which is this drug, and we're happy to have a debate and even ask experts to sort of weigh in about a couple of points to help the company generate the right data, because obviously we'd love to have it show back up with really clear differentiation. But personally, for me, I do see a lot of failures at that point where it does appear that companies have been very focused on their one thing and they haven't seen a sort of scientific picture around. If you're in a I'm not saying you have to do a full market analysis, but if you're in a particular pathway and there's 2 or 3 nodes, it would be good to mention why you're better than the other nodes, or at least competitive, and at least have done a Cortellis search or similar competitive search, just to show that you're in a chance, because we will do that as part of our assessment, and if it's a shambles, that's probably not going to be great.
No, I think that's correct. As I mentioned earlier, Amgen has a rather narrow scope, and as Tim is alluding to, we know the area well. So if we see presentations where there's too much over-exaggeration, then of course you get in doubt whether the partner potentially is of true interest. Also, passing on an opportunity indeed does not mean it's a bad opportunity. It's very often a matter of timing. In some cases, we want to see solid clinical data. In some cases, we simply want to see GLP tox. That could be sufficient to see an opportunity moving first in human. It is fair to say that we need to prioritize, but this is obviously always the case. I must say that we may have today a stronger interest in inflammation. Amgen acquired the product of Tesla, which has, of course, significantly changed our inflammation presence. Of course, we have Enbrel, but this is definitely adding significant value, and hopefully also for the future to the portfolio. Oncology, I think the hurdle is a bit higher, simply because we have a significant early stage pipeline with a number of BiTE molecules. And as I mentioned earlier, the other areas within, for instance, nephrology and bone health, that is much more later stage focused. And in cardiovascular, unfortunately, there is, what we at least believe, not so much innovation that we'd like. But heart failure, for instance, is an area that we definitely would pick up as an interesting area. So again, we're quite selective, quite niched, and obviously we know these areas very well.
Tom, do you have a response code for we're already working on that target, and so we don't want to talk to you? That's a tough one. If you're already working in an area, that's a tricky response, isn't it? I mean, like a very specific area.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tricky response. I mean, of course, people can know what we're working on. Of course, we're not telling everything. That is obvious. We're actually not necessarily shying away too much from that, because sometimes actually we're quite interested in the target of interest that we're also working on. A week ago, we were talking to a company that is working on a specific target of interest. And actually the discussion, although of course we are on the confidentiality, there is a level where we can actually, well, indicate to the company, okay, guys, we know this area very well, so it's very likely that we're working on a similar kind of target. Whether we are more advanced, of course, that we leave in the middle. But it's not necessarily what biotechs may believe. It's a competitive intelligence call. That is not necessarily the case. I think it would be a bit naive of us to basically shy away from not being at least decently transparent on these kind of things.
So we do have a group here that's spread out from pretty far around the world. We have East Coast, West Coast, UK, and Scandinavia. I know that the focus of my group tends to be for regional partnering, and it feels like, especially at this RESI conference, that sort of that co-localization part of talking to early innovators is all blown up, because it's really around time zones. You look at the partnering sessions, and there's 24 hours of time slots you can pick. Is this an aberration, or I mean, we talked about relationship building and having champions in the company. What do you think things are going to change? Do you think that's important? Are we just going to work our way through this and get back to normal? That's a pretty big question with a lot of open ends there. But if you want, you can also just talk about relationships and how your company covers regions too, and how that's being affected.
Yeah,
go ahead, Tom.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. It's fair to say that Amgen is very US orientated. That has an origin, obviously. But I think it's also correct that we have a strong presence in Europe. We are building up presence in China. I'm pretty sure you have seen the Beijing deal that we did quite recently. We are moving joint ventures in Japan into, Amgen subsidiaries. So we are touching upon, let's say, the big 7 markets. Yes, we have presence also in smaller markets, covering, therefore, the partnering. It is driven very much by the US. The European BD team, there are people in Switzerland, as well as now also in Scandinavia. So we are better in covering the bio hubs than we may have been, let's say, 5 years ago. So I think 24 hours is of course a possibility. I'm not necessarily saying that will be fruitful for all parties. It will be challenging, but there's definitely, due to the COVID-19, a shift in how we can approach each other, and that will definitely change. That will have an impact.
Yeah, I'm going to give 2 perspectives on this. So I'm going to give the personal perspective and the what I think is realistically happening. I think personally, I'm craving to be back in Boston and New York and having face-to-face discussions and being in a conference room. I never thought that I would say that, but I'd be very happy to be in a conference room right now. I'd be happy getting a coffee at the community kitchen area. But realistically though, I think we are maximizing our days more than what we've ever done. And for those of us within the business development communities, investor communities, we really don't need to be face to face to be conducting business. And I would say that for us, I mean, work has not really slowed down. We're still doing deals. We're still doing due diligence. It's a little more difficult, and sometimes there's pain. Like today, with one of the future CEOs of the company, one company that we're looking to start up, we needed to brainstorm on a research plan, a business plan for moving forward. Now, this would be something that would be great if we could be in the same room, have a whiteboard, get up, be able to draw some figures, erase some figures, that kind of thing. We're doing it online and we're doing it through slides, but it's just not the same thing. It's you're losing that ability. We're getting it done. It's a little more painful, but it is something. The whole telecommuting type of approach is not stopping us. It's just slowing us down, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, I would pretty much echo that. It's a little bit paradoxical or schizophrenic. I mean, yes, we're sort of in the middle of the first wave of this, so I'm not sure how the digital side's going to go. Some things are clearly a lot better my travel, I used to be away 50% of my time, and actually, did I really need to be in all those places, or was I just, scared of missing out on a couple of things, or adding a little bit of value? So maybe it has made us a bit more aware and sensible. But I'm also aware that many of the things I'm working on at the moment have been historical contacts that I've known or had some face-to-face time with them, at least historically. And I do think there is a place for, I know it's maybe a bit old school, but having dinner with someone, or having a drink with someone or a cup of coffee, seeing whether you can actually work together and, laugh together, because deals go through good times and they go through bad times when you're wading through those 400-page legal agreements. And so it is good to have spent a little bit of downtime with someone. It doesn't have to be excessive. So I'm kind of in the middle. I definitely agree. I can work 20 hours a day in different time zones if I need to, and we can get things done. We do miss the kind of whiteboarding and the laughing and a few drinks here and there, and I think they do genuinely help build a sort of common rapport. It's all the usual, team building and getting to know people's story, and that I don't think we can do completely without that, if I'm honest. But maybe the balance between the two methods might change a little bit.
Yeah, Tim. A big part of the role of my group too is alliance management, and so it's well beyond the deal is learning to live with the partners, and invariably, like any relationship, you hit hard spots, and you build a lot of emotional capital over the pre-dinner cocktails or whatever it is, or even as Mark was mentioning in some of the brainstorming sessions in a room where you really work through hard problems and solve them together. And I agree that those types of things are lacking. And so I'm hoping that we get back to some level of non-calendared interactions, as it were, because I think those have a lot of value. But Tim, you also talked about this relationship piece. And so getting beyond Mark's excellent points on declining, what about where you actually, where you're moving towards a deal? And I know that both Tom and Tim talked about your ability to move fast, but a lot of deals don't move fast. So a lot of times it takes some iterations. It takes a lot of socializing the concept within the company. And maybe you can also speak to your role maybe as the frontline person, as being an advocate for the company, because I know we all face that sometimes. We really believe in a science, because we've dove in and talked to the CEO and know it, and often we're that advocate within the company. So how does, as the small company CEO, how do you leverage that? How do you respect the fact that they have a process to go through? What do they need to understand about our roles in that advancing a deal in the early stages?
Yeah, I guess I mean, I've been on both sides of the line, being the small guy in a tiny biotech, and now obviously in a big machine. I guess ironically, both sides have different but same level of difficulties and problems. So I would say if you can help me get the ammunition I need to get things done, I mean, you're a kind of the external CEO is really a help and a supporter to me. I mean, you can be sure that for a decent sized deal, it needs to get up people's priority list. We need to get our key influential scientists excited. Ultimately, we'll need a vice president, exec sponsor if it's a certain size of deal. It will need to go through governance, and each of those areas will have a say. And clearly, when you ask 20 different people for an opinion, you'll get 20 opinions, and they do diverge somewhat sometimes. So we are, if we are spending time with you, it means we believe in what you're doing, but we have an equal need to bring people with us. I'm also very respectful that big pharma machines have a lot of people, and we can easily tie up an entire biotech company just dealing with us and answering questions and being responsive. So we can pull 5 people into a meeting, but that could be the entire management team of the biotech company, and clearly they're not then able to work. So I think there's a balance here, but just be aware that if things go a little bit quiet or we're asking a lot of questions, it probably means that we're getting those questions internally, and we've got a few people to get over the line or help understand the value. And actually, I find that certainly within Lilly, the corporate culture is really very good. People are pretty honest and really want to help and get behind things, but they clearly have got a long list of priorities both internally and externally to deal with. So that's why it comes back to helping us understand why this is special, why it's different, why you're different to competition, because those are all the kind of things. I mean, I will do my homework too, but those are all the kind of areas that I need to push and say, look, guys, this is a really exciting deal. It's going to make a difference, not only for the biotech, but for Lilly's pipeline as well. And different areas have different priorities. Lilly are in quite a few ranges of, we're in oncology, immunology, neurodegen, pain, and diabetes as our core areas. And each of those have got different challenges and different needs. And some want late stage assets, some are happy with early stage platforms, some have got very difficult challenges in certain target classes. Sometimes we talked about doubling down on targets. Sometimes we will want an inhibitor, a degrader, a translation inhibitor, an siRNA. We're just not too sure where the sweet spot of the biology might be. So yeah, the more you can do to help us be your champion, but we've got a lot of stakeholders ourselves to get over the line to really get these deals done too. But thankfully, we are pretty well connected, and we know. I mean, I'm probably one down from the executive committee level at Lilly, so we have got access to all those people. But they're busy guys, and they've got a lot on their plate. So we, just help us get to them in the right way, basically.
Yeah. Any advice on if you're that biotech CEO and you're kind of wondering what's happening, on following up? So emails, just checking in, they're all fine, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this is like a once a bit of rapport's been built up, there's no issue in saying, anything I can do to help. Haven't heard for a couple of weeks. I'm usually pretty honest, saying, look, it's stuck in governance, or I'm waiting for a reply. I'll rechase it, or actually we're just reanalyzing something. I'm usually, don't, like any part of life, I would say, don't be a pain, don't be embarrassed at getting in touch, but just strike a sort of, friendly, helpful tone, and everything usually is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that applies for Amgen as well. As I mentioned earlier, we're a small team, so it should not be difficult to get heard. It is important, of course, as we all have said earlier, that when the company or the CEO gets in touch with us, we need to understand also not only about the asset, the objective with the asset, but also I would personally also appreciate whether they already have thought about some kind of way to collaborate. I mean, the structure of the collaboration is important because it also gives us some insights on, okay, how do they want to interact with us? That is not only important for what the asset is about, but it is also important with respect to finding a research collaboration structure. Other than that, we have, as I'm pretty sure BI and Lilly also have, triaging processes. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the BD organization reports to the CEO, so that is an easy route, let's say, to get to the executive committee. We have triaging at R&D level, commercial level, and then basically it goes to the deal committee. So it's in continuous ongoing escalation and communication between several levels in the organization. But obviously the BOD organization is a small organization, and we are, well, pretty important to the organization. I mean, close to 50% of all our programs are coming from partnering. So that, I think, tells a lot.
Mm-hmm. What about switching gears a little bit then to specifics on assets? I think one question that we're all addressing a lot now is our own company's interest in COVID-specific technologies or therapies. A lot of them repurposed, a lot of them, the slide deck has been modified, where people are finding new opportunities for a brand new space. Also, there's some new approaches out there. Bayer doesn't have a long history, or isn't currently very active in antiviral specifically, but even there, we're finding ways in the lung disease area and using our compound library to partner in some places. It's a sliver of the opportunities we're seeing, because of course there's been a massive shift in energy toward this area right now. What about your individual companies? Are you seeing this too? And is this something where you're shifting strategy, or does it fit an existing strategy? And do you think it's going to last? Is this a short window, or do companies need to jump now?
I could speak from the BI side. I think, Chris, what every pharmaceutical company is trying to balance right now, especially on the therapeutics angle of things, is speed and your discovery efforts, right? So You mentioned it. It's basically about repurposing your pipeline. So, candidates have already made it into the clinic. You probably made it past phase 1. That you may be able to reposition for treatment of COVID-19. But realistically, we know that if we were to start from a de novo approaches, it's going to get tough to move with the speed that is required in this framework. I think the other part that BI is doing right now is realizing the value between public-private partnerships. And I know over in Germany, BI is very engaged with the IMI and how multiple different partners are bringing in different financial contributions and in-kind contributions as well. So those are more the approaches that BI is taking right now. I'm encouraged by seeing some of the other biotech partners and new vaccine technologies that are coming along. I think from one perspective, it's great. This whole COVID-19, if you actually look at the silver lining, is going to advance some new modality approaches to really kind of figure out what's going on in some of the spaces. I'm thinking mostly of Moderna here, and how these different approaches may get validated, not necessarily for COVID-19, but just what we're actually seeing in the clinic with these types of modalities. So this, that will be very interesting. Do I think that it's going to be long term? I don't know. To a certain extent, my personal opinion is that COVID-19 is here to stay, and we're going to adapt it. With treatments, with vaccines, the efficacy of the vaccines. I don't know. We will have to see how that actually works out, especially as the virus mutates, and whether we are able to cover the most prevalent mutations. But there's a lot right now that is uncertain. I don't want to make that projection. If I was that good, I'd make a lot of money.
Crystal ball spot, yeah. But I'm just trying to see if there's any advice we can give to companies that may have early discovery efforts in this space. And it does feel like the life cycle of developing a therapeutic, even accelerated, may challenge that business model, because clearly the market's going to be different. 6-7 years optimistically, from a development standpoint from now.
Yeah. So. Amgen is, we announced the deal with Adaptive on the 1st of April, where we signed an MOU with them. This is obviously in the antibody space, so not in the vaccine space. Antibody is of course one of the modalities that Amgen is very strong at. In combination with the genetic validation where Decode comes in, you may have seen also the paper that Decode published, I think 3 weeks ago, about the measuring of COVID-19 in the Icelandic population. So those are all trigger points that has gained COVID-19 interest in Amgen. That also has triggered several other companies reaching out to Amgen, whether they could support these kind of efforts. Of course, we are not an infectious diseases or vaccine company, so longer term, I think it's difficult. Also, as Mark says, it's probably difficult to already put something strategically on the table. This is for us also an effort that we truly believe to serve patients, which is a general statement, of course, that Amgen is making as well. So we are seeing definitely a very strong need. Whether that is going to accelerate in other areas of COVID or influenza, etc., that is, I think, a bit early to say. But we have an interest. We do believe that initially this will not necessarily a large commercial play. But it definitely falls into the objective that Amgen has serving patients.
Yeah, Eli Lilly have come out and said they're going to do all they can to try and help patients. In common, I think, actually with almost every pharmaceutical company, which is great news. We have a long history in the rapid development of antibodies, so those sorts of projects obviously play to our strengths. And we, announced a deal with AbCellera, who managed to isolate some antibodies from some of the first recovered COVID patients, and I believe we're within a very short period of time we're already starting clinical studies now, which is amazing. So that's an area that does play to our strength. I mean, from a corporate point of view, Lilly set up a testing unit in the state of Indiana for kind of key workers and others. So they've done quite a range of things at risk and cost. I think they genuinely do want to help. We're also looking into some collaborations around the genetics and the differences between patients who recover and who go on to get very serious complications in disease. It's not really well understood what those differences really are. What are the differences between patients that have oxygen and those that go on ventilators? There's a lot of underlying hypotheses around inflammation and other things, but actually we're interested in some collaborations around the sort of genetics and sequencing of those sorts of cohorts of patients. I guess realistically, being an optimist, if vaccines are successful, this time next year, that may well be the main market, and let's hope that's true. And these, the vaccinations do actually provide protection for a good period of time. But at the moment, I think we're trying to make as big a difference for patients as we can. So that does mean prioritizing things that are very close or in the clinic, or things that we feel that we can make a difference and accelerate. And I guess for the whole range of different types of science, there will be preferred partners who've got that expertise to accelerate vaccines, antibodies, small molecules. I think we've definitely had a bolus of every type of COVID project you could possibly think of, which is obviously great. But there is also a lot of dusting off and repurposing of old projects that are a long way from success. And I guess with the high unmet medical need, and patients are dying at the moment, so we really want to try and focus on things that can provide very near-term benefit. And I'll be honest, I'm not actually too sure what the long-term story is around whether we'll stay in commercially, what it means to my company. I don't think we've come out with a firm statement, but I think we're pretty focused on helping people as much as we can over the coming year or two. And I guess I'll hear what our leaders want to do beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you speak to a good point, which is often a good advice to early entrepreneurs, is not to worry so much about market size. If there's an unmet need that you can address, then don't worry about the reimbursement structures or what you're going to charge for it. Let the pharma deal with that once you get proof of concept, but shoot for that unmet need. I think that's a great message for us, both in COVID, in terms of everything that we look at in terms of the science. I think we're probably at a good time to actually wrap this up now. And sort of sticking with this, I'll let you close with anything that you think we left on the table, maybe a message you want to get out you think is important to early investors or about your organization. But I'd also like you to make a prediction as to whether RESI 2021 will be in person or not. You got to do that. Yes, just a thumbs up down there. Mark, I'm going to pick on you again. Start.
Sure. So some parting words from BI, from a partnering focus and from an investment focus from the BI Venture Fund. We are very interested in hearing early stage ideas for the parent company. We are looking for licensing opportunities and early stage collaborations in the areas of CNS, oncology, cardiometabolic diseases, and immunology and respiratory. And in the venture fund, we have both a therapeutic digital health focus. We're also looking at gene editing, gene therapy type of companies as well. Anti-infectives is actually a big push within the venture fund angle as well. Again, with a longer term focus, looking 8 to 10 years into the future. So that's the angle. Now, to your question as to whether we're going to be together in person. So what's that, June of 2021, right, is what we're talking about if we're looking at 1 year from now? I'm thinking, yes, we will be together. I think that's going to happen. Now, whether we'll be wearing masks or walking around with hand sanitizers constantly and doing elbow bumps, that might be the situation, but I think we will be together.
Yeah, I think Yeah, from an Amgen point of view, I touched upon, as a closing note, I touched upon the therapeutic areas by the mother company, oncology, inflammation, cardiovascular, and to a later stage extent, nephrology and bone health. I think that was clear. And we are, again, very happy to basically turn every stone in these areas. We also have a venture fund that has a focus which is slightly different. Oncology is present, but has a very high hurdle to get hurt, basically, you can say. We're focusing more on areas that maybe the mothership is not focusing that much on. We do focus on cell therapy as a strategic VC part, not TA alike. We're looking at health informatics, AI, e-health. It is important that companies that come to us in those areas are already engaged in the healthcare system. That's the same with diagnostics as part of health informatics. That is of interest, not as a standalone tool. So the focus of the venture fund is slightly different. It has obviously also a seed fund, which helps, of course, smaller companies to get funded. With respect to RESI 2021, I would definitely do a thumbs up. We don't know, of course, how that will look like, and indeed whether we should be protected 24 hours a day. I hope not, but I'm very positive on that because we never know when a vaccine will be applicable. I would say Q1, Q2, maybe very positive, very optimistic, but that maybe should be a good timing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it again, Lilly is open for business. I'm also very conscious that there's a lot of other life-threatening diseases that people are suffering from, and I know the focus now has to be on COVID for acute reasons, but there are an awful lot of cancer patients, autoimmune disease patients, respiratory patients that all need help as well. As a slightly aging man myself, I don't want us to take the foot off the gas for these longevity enhancers either. So no, I mean, seriously, we're open for business. We're as passionate about getting medicines through our pipeline as ever. There are a few challenges, and but everyone I know is actually probably working harder at the moment with these extra time zones and a lot more interest in what we're doing. Yeah, I mean, our core areas: oncology, immunology, neurodegen, pain, and diabetes. Lilly's also invested over $1 billion in positions in other people's venture funds, and those are a great source of new thinking, new medical breakthroughs, and we have small exposure to somewhere between 250 and 300 different biotechs, and all of those are really great sources of new thinking for us to consider in the future. Yeah, I think as a planet we'll have to find a way through this, but the fundamentals of needing great biomedical research and treatments hasn't gone away. So please continue to interact, certainly with Lilly and the pharma industry as a whole. As for RESI, obviously, thank you for the invite to this. I would like to think, as an optimist, that 2021 is going to take place. There will be prophylactics, neutralizing antibodies, and a rock-solid vaccine in place, and we can get back to normal and have a great life. But I guess the reality is that those timelines, will be a stretch. So I would imagine it will take place. We'll have to be a little bit more careful, but obviously I would love to see, colleagues and friends and innovators again face to face. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks. I think what you've heard over the course of this last hour is that partnering is still going on. We're all still, I think, open for business was the term I heard. Just on the Bayer standpoint, we've also have this venture fund Leaps that's been looking for curative therapies that did some initial investments in gene therapy and cell therapy as well as gene editing. And I would say they continue to lead with investments that are more forward-looking, but Bayer is very interested right now in advancing different modalities that we're looking at and taking the programs that we have in cell and gene therapy and adding to that with additional therapeutic modalities, really looking more for curative therapies. And given how much innovation sits, in this virtual room here, I'm hoping that the pharma industry will be able to advance the cures to let us meet in person next year. I want to thank RESI. I think they're doing a great job at creating a virtual room here. but I think you heard it, that we all like the in-person one better. So with that, I'll thank all the panelists and thank RESI, and thank you if you happen to tune into this.